My name is Dolores Santos, and thank you for tuning in to my presentation for the problem in and of practice. So a little background information on my professional position in connection to the problem in practice. I've been a special ed teacher for 8 years now, which has brought up many challenges such as shortage of staff, lack of services, and the rise of students with autism in particular. Specifically, the problem practice that I am interested in right now is the rise of students with autism in our schools and the lack of services that are being provided, and how that basically really affects them socially, emotionally, and behavior, and also how cultural dynamics plays a huge role in that as well. The stakeholders for this specific problem in practice are, of course, the students themselves, their parents and families, teachers, paraprofessionals, school and the school staff, like support staff, and then, of course, the Guam Department of Education. For the educational organizational context, Guam definitely follows IDEA as well as the main US. However, because we're so isolated and far away from the mainland, we do face isolation, limited local funding, and chronic staffing shortages, which is honestly seen across the country. We operate with minimal resources and outdated infrastructure. We are facing strain because we see the rise of number of students requiring individualized services and supports. However, we don't have the means to fully support them the way we should. We have lack of trained personnel, professional development opportunities for teachers and staff are limited. For cultural community context, identifying students with autism can definitely be tied to cultural beliefs and social economic backgrounds of families, especially here in Micronesia. A lot of them being ESL, so they don't really understand what may be manifesting, how to identify those early signs of autism, or they can be very prideful and just be resistant to having their child assessed at all. How can families have their child tested at an earlier age when they cannot afford the medical attention? They do not understand the behaviors and characteristics that their child may be manifesting, or because they're ashamed or embarrassed. It's important for us as educators to understand each child's culture in order to interpret family priorities and behaviors in order for us to really help their child. So as schools, we must be culturally responsive and have a sensitive, tolerant teachers and students to help struggling families assimilate into a new school and potentially a new program, especially if they're ESL. The ethical dilemma is the ongoing failure to provide equitable and legally mandated services due to systematic underfunding and resource limitations. So these are supplemental aids and services that should be provided to students with autism that are IEP stipulated. However, Guam does not have the means to provide that. Ethical tension between what the law requires, such as IDEA, and what realistically is feasible within our GDOE. And for example, if the IEP stipulates for daily paraprofessional support and OT services, we are short over 100 paraprofessionals for the Guam Department of Education alone. So that's something that's IEP stipulated that the Guam Department of Education is not able to provide. So that's just one example. Ethical decision making. We have the 4 paradigms of ethics. So the first one is ethic of care. Caring for students with ASD starts with seeing them as whole individuals. It's not just as students who need services, but as children. They're still kids with emotions, challenges, and strengths who deserve the kindness, support, and respect, especially in the school setting where they really spend most of their childhood. It also ties in the ethic of justice. The fact that these vital services are missing is not just a budget issue, but it's a failure to protect the rights of these kids and their families. The ethic of critique. The ethical duty is to demand big fundamental changes like providing the services, where are the aids, bringing in enough staff, funding, and culturally relevant programs to meet the actual needs of these students. And then lastly, the ethic of the profession, which requires educators and administrators in Micronesia to become powerful internal advocates within their schools, which means actively fighting against the status quo of what's been going on, which has been happening for years. So that's basically the gist of my paper and the gist of the problem in practice. There's lots of things that need to be addressed and changed within the system. And I hope that this was very interesting and something that we can all learn together. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.